Hi everyone. In this video we are going to learn the Excel functions which will help us in creating the data sets or the databases that can be used for any of the training activity or for any immediate Excel analytics or try out some formulas. So like these are those Excel functions. One is sequence, the random between, the random array, rows and columns, and a nested function index and rand between. So these are the functions which are going to be like simply useful for creating the data sets. So let's say like at the end of this training, I mean like if you see all these, let's say this is kind of a student database where we have a student ID and the name just has given as like a person, and then like each subject wise marks and what is the blood group and what is the sex, whether it's a male, female or any other. So if you see like this data set is for like some 500 number of students, so none of it is like manually entered, everything is an Excel function except to the heading and the data group for the blood group and sex. So this is what we're going to learn in this video. So let's jump right into how we're going to do it. So let me just go to the sheet 1. Firstly, I'll explain how the sequence function, like we'll go in the sequence of the functions like that's given in this presentation. So let's start with the sequence. So a sequence is the function which will help us to generate the numbers like in a sequence. So this is how the function is going to work. This is the syntax, equal to the sequence. And right now, let's say I want to just have a 1 to 100 serial numbers in this row starting right from N2. So when it's just rows, I'm just going to give it as 100 and I can just leave it as blank. So and press enter. My bad, sorry. So that's it. It's like sequence 100 and then close the bracket and then close it. So that's what I mean, like I already have the serial number like till 100 over here. So this is how this function is gonna work. So let's say like instead of rows I want columns, so the sequence and then 0. So this is how it's gonna come. Let's say like it has gone till like the 100 columns, like if you haven't want a serial number coming in the column. So let's just say maybe like I want 1 to 10 here and I want like 100 cells selected and the 100 coming in all these cells. So this is what I'm gonna do. So equal to the sequence, and I want the data set in like 10 rows and 10 columns starting with 1, 10 rows, 10 columns, and then I have to start with 1 and step by step as 1. So that's how it's gonna come. So let's say now I want the number starting from 1000, not just 1. So what I'm gonna do is like 10 rows and 10 columns and 1000 each in the step of 1. So that's how it's gonna come. So let's say I want right from 1000 in the like in the gap of each 100. So 1000 and 100. So that's it, like we're gonna have the numbers like this. So let's say instead I want it starting from 1100 so that I can end it with like 11,000 over here as we selected like 11 columns. So I'm gonna just say like 1100 is the starting number. So it's gonna end up with like 11,000. So that's how the sequence is gonna help us. So let's say in the case of student ID here, I want the ID to be starting somewhere from what 1501 and ending with 2000, so that we'll have a database of like some 500 students. So I'm gonna start the function like this, sequence, and then I want the information to be in like what some 500 rows and in one single column. I don't want any array of data, and I want the starting steps to be 1501 and I want it in the intervals of 1. So I'm just gonna press enter. So that's how like we have the student ID over here like starting from 1501 to 2000. That's like how we create the sequence. And as I said, like these are the other uses of sequence, like where you can have a columnar sequencing and whether you want any array of data like in each intervals of time. So this is how it's gonna help us. So that's it. Just one main thing is like as this is an array function, the formula has to be entered only in like one single cell, and you have to make sure that there are no values in the other cells so that the formula will not return any error. So let's say like here I had my name, let's say Krishna in this cell, and instead of 10 columns I say like okay, you go from 11 rows and 11 columns. So it's gonna tell me it's a spill because I already have my name over here. So let's say I'll just delete that to make sure that the data set in which the function has to go and fill the data in that array, I have to make sure that that array is blank. So I just delete this Krishna and the formula works it out. So that's how it's gonna work, the sequence functions. I'm just gonna like delete it over here so that the data will be clean. So let's say like we generated the student ID. Now we have to generate the student name. As I said, let's say the student names I'm expecting to be in the name of like person 1, person 2, person 3. So what I'm gonna do here is like I have to just like write equal to person first, as I want it to be like person with a gap. So this is how I'm gonna type it out now. Equal to, open this thing, and then person and a dash, and then close it, and then give an end function which will just like give the result of person dash and what is the number I'm gonna give them. So I'm just gonna write the sequence function again, the sequence, and we already know there are like some 500 rows, so the 500 rows, and then one column, and then I want it in the name of like person 1, person 2. That's how I want it. So I'll start with 1, and then I want it in the steps of each one as the bracket, or let's say like I want the each gap to be some 5, so that like we'll start with person 1, person 6, like that it's gonna happen. So let me just press enter. So that's how it's gonna come out, person 1, person 6, person 11, person 16. So just for the betterment of eyes, I mean let's just say just one only, so that we'll have person 1, person 2 and all. So that's how it's gonna come. So if you see, it has filled till that 500th row, I mean like the 501th row as the first row is with the heading. So we created the student ID and the student names. So now for creating this like the math function, we can just either do like anything. I mean like we can use the rand, we can use the rand between, or we can use the rand array. So I'll tell you about the rand first. So the rand is a random function. It's the syntax is like very simple, equal to rand, open the bracket and close the bracket. One thing with the rand function is it will give you any integer, I mean like any value that's either greater than or equal to 0, or it should, and also like it's less than 1. So the thing is like it will, whatever number like you generate here, it will always be less than 1. So let's say I definitely can't get like 0.68 marks in maths, so I just multiply it with 100, so that like we'll have some big number, so 76. And one thing with these functions is like until you keep like the copy and paste special the data, whenever you press an F9, the data will just keep changing. So it's like the formula calculates the cell again and again. So that's how it's happening here. So let's say like right now I got some 77.380111, like it looks like very odd number to get in maths. So the thing is like what I'm gonna do is like I'm gonna convert it into an integer. So what I'm gonna do is like I already have the rand into 100, so I'm just gonna do is like integer, int is the integer function. So it's gonna turn that value in that cell into an integer, which will be like easy for our eyes to read. So it turned it out into like 46. So that's how the rand is gonna help us. So what I'm gonna do is like I mean like in case of rand, like you have to again multiply with 100 and you have to convert it using an integer function. So in the next case, what I'm gonna do is like I'm gonna give it as rand between. So I'm gonna tell the Excel to see, okay, this is my base mark. So let's say like the minimum I can get is like 1 mark, or let's say 0 marks, or it could have like failed. So let's say in this case I'm keeping 1 as the base. So let's say I can get either 1 mark or I can get like 100 marks, as I'm expecting that the total is for like 100 marks. So I can just give it like anything like that. As I said, until I pay special this thing, whenever I press F9, the values keep changing for the random function. So I can do like that, either integer on the rand function and again multiply by 100, or I can just do a rand between 1 and 100, and I can just extend it for the entire 500 students. So that's how I mean like it's gonna like go till the down like where you have the information. So this is how you can fill the data using rand and rand between. And there is, as I said, I mean there is like one more function in the random sequence, which is rand array. So let's go back to the Excel ones. So here like we fill the maths marks using the rand and rand between. For science, social and English, so let's say like we have an array that has to be filled out for like 500 rows and 3 columns. So I can just copy paste this rand between for all these 3 things. So let's say like even I'm lazy, I don't even want to copy this for all these columns again and again. So what I'm gonna do is like I'm gonna use this rand array function, which is like it can randomly fill in an array of data, like any information which you want to give. So that's how it's gonna work, rand array. and how many rows I have here. I have 500 students, so 500 rows, and I'm talking about 3 columns as I have science, social, and English. And the minimum mark could be like 1 and the maximum could be like 100. So here, like whether I want an integer or I want a decimal, so let's say like I want an integer, and then just like press enter. So let's say like I don't want an integer, so what I'm gonna do is like 1 comma 100 comma true. True is gonna like freeze the decimals that I have to see. So that's how like we're gonna get it now. So but like as I said, one thing is like as long as I keep pressing F9, the marks gonna change for all the random functions. That's how like we have learned about the sequence in these first stages, and also the small uses of the end function, which will just read and like concatenate both the sequence here, and also how to use the rand and the rand between, and also the rand array function. And then coming to a nested function here. So in the previous session we learned like how to use the index function using an array of data and the rows and the column numbers referencing. So now for filling up the blood group and the sex of the person, so we already have a data set here, like what are the different kinds of blood group, either positive, negative, or any other blood groups like Bombay blood group. And in the sex also, like we have male, female, and any other that's available. So the thing is like in order to randomly fill this information, like as long as it's number, we can use like the rand array, and rand between. But now I want to fill any random value from a certain set of information that's already available in my databases. So that's where the index function is gonna come in handy. So that's how we already know the syntax for the index function, the index and then the array. So the array is nothing but the j2 to j10 over here. So I'm just gonna freeze that data panes. So now, and the row number like which I have to give over here is like from where I want the information to be coming out. So let's say like I have the second row to 10th row. So here where I'm gonna bringing the rand between function, because I want the random number and it should be between the 1 and the number of rows in that data. So rand between, let's say 1, and how many rows are there in my data set. So let's say rows is the function which will gonna tell me like how many rows are there between j2 to j10. So okay, like I have given the random between what is my base number and what is my highest number. So let's say like 1 is my base number and my maximum number is could be the number of rows, which is nothing but the 9 I think here. So let's say like I can just close the bracket over there. So I have given the row referencing, and now I have to give the column reference. My column reference is nothing but 1, as I have like only one column over here, and close the bracket. So that's how the rand between is going to work out. So I'm gonna read the syntax of the function once again. Index and my data array, which is only in single column of j over here, that is j2 to j10, and the rand between is the function which is gonna randomly pick any number between 1 and the number of rows. Like when you enter only these rows j2 to j10, it's gonna give me as 9. So it's gonna pick any number between 1 and 9, and the index function is going to pick any like the corresponding the blood group in that row number. So that's how this total function is working out. So I'm gonna like paste it to the entire data set. So it's gonna like, as long as I said it's a random function, the number inside the row referencing is gonna change for the index, and the blood group also like parallelly keep changing. So that's how this function is gonna work. And let's use the similar or the same function for picking up the sex as well. So let's say the index and let's say like here my array is k2 to k4. I'm gonna freeze the data set, and then the random between is gonna come in, the rand between, open the bracket, and then starting number is 1 as usual, and the number of rows again is going to be between k2 to k4. and then close the bracket, and then the column reference is as usual 1, as we have only like one column over here. My bad, let me just close the bracket. So that's how it is. So I'm just gonna like drag it to the entire set of information. So when you see, I mean, like right now within like 10-15 minutes we have generated like different set of information, and this is like very dynamic data. So let's say as long as you like keep pressing F9, the data is gonna keep changing. But the minute like you pay special all this data, the random function will just go away, and you have a freeze data like, and this can be generated like for thousands and thousands of line items. And based on these kind of data sets, I just gave a blood group and sex here. You can just say like the department in which the employee is working, or like the nationality, or like anything. You can just create a small data set, and you can like use the index and rand between function to generate this random set of data. So these are like the basic functions which we use. So just coming back, like there is this function like the rows which we just used in that index thing. So rows is like a very simple function which is gonna tell me, when I just select some certain set of data, like how many rows are there in it. It's just gonna tell me I selected the data in like 9 rows, J2 to J10. So it's gonna tell me like there are 9 rows in it. So it's like as simple as it. So let's say the columns is the function which is gonna tell me like how many columns are there in any certain set of data. So let's say like here I have A to H, so which is nothing but 8 columns, I guess. So it's going to tell me like how many columns are there in that set of data. So it's as simple as it. So that's how like the rows and the columns function. These are like very simple functions which is going to tell me what is the total number of rows and the total number of columns. But rand array, and rand between are like very useful functions when you have to like randomly generate some set of data and all. So this is it, guys. So drop in comments like in case you face any difficulties in these functions, or you want any specific functions to be explained in the new videos. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.